Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today are my thoughts on Runemasters. Okay, so Runemasters. Okay, this is a cooperative game where you are defending against waves of enemies coming in and trying to destroy a temple. This is a very approachable game in a lot of ways. Very inexpensive. It's maybe like $30. Very easy to learn. Probably play time 45 minutes to an hour, so pretty quick to play. So quick to play, easy to learn, inexpensive, pretty approachable. However, it does have, in its theme and its mechanisms to some degree, very stiff competition with one of my favorite all-time games, or the two, I guess, technically, and that's Ghost Stories and Last Bastion. They have a lot of similar mechanisms. The theming is very similar in terms of this tower defense game, waves of enemies coming in and having like each of your characters have these special abilities. So stiff competition there. So let's talk about the theme and the components. As I said, it's a very inexpensive game. The art is good. I'm not like blown away by it, but it works for the game. I think a lot of times you're looking at the icons and stuff anyway. The components are good. They're not like phenomenal. The boards are decent. The cards are normal card quality. The dice are really nice. They do have different symbols as well as different colors. The only knock I'm going to give against the dice though is that, like, I'll look at a symbol, sometimes a couple of the symbols are very similar, and the colors are a little bit unmatched to what they are. And maybe that's just to my eyes, I don't know, but I'll look at them often and I'll be like, okay, is this one, this one, this one? Okay, it's this one. And so for that reason, I think it's kind of a little bit odd. Another weird thing about the components, for such an inexpensive game, and components are obviously quite expensive to produce, they give you a fifth die. Now you're going to roll 4 dice in the game at every turn. That's how you're going to determine your actions. But they give you a fifth die, and I was like, what? I think you could very easily think that you have 5 dice to roll. There's a card that gives you, just for a round, a special ability that gives you an extra die. So for a card that you could play dozens of games and never get, possibly, and you only get to use it for a round, it's kind of interesting that they chose to do that. So, but yeah, all the other chits and things, decently made. They do have inlays for your health and mana trackers, so that that will stay lodged in there. So that's a little extra thing that I've been noticing a lot of games have been doing recently. Okay, so let's tackle one of the things that affects me a lot in gaming, and that's luck. There are a lot of points of luck. Now, I usually use Pandemic as my benchmark to say, okay, well, the luck is in the cards that you draw into your hand. The luck is in the cards that are coming out of the enemy deck or the villain deck, and those are really your 2 points of luck. Everything else is deterministic. This game has a lot more luck. Okay, so in one way, you have the deck that you are removing some of the monsters from, so so that's a point of luck. Maybe you get some of the rougher monsters, maybe you don't. Then the order that they come out, that's going to make a difference, and then your events, and those events are really going to change things up game to game, and they can be quite swingy, I suppose. And then the biggest point of luck, however, is your actions are going to be determined by rolling these dice. And when you roll the dice, you're going to look at the die you rolled and say, okay, you can use the die to move to a location if it's a certain color, and then there's going to be a die, or you can use that to fight a monster if they have that icon on their card. And so I think a lot of games that use this style, it's like that use a lot of die rolling, and I think hard to explain. I find that a lot of times when you have a game that you roll dice for, I feel like the movement should be like an action, right? So if you have an action and you're like, okay, well, you can always move. And I think a Final Girl, a very popular game, wasn't big for me. It makes it so that you can't, you're like, well, I'd love to move here and use these random dice I rolled, but I can't because I didn't roll the die. I need to move there. And so a lot of times in this game, I feel, you can spend any die at any time if it's useless to you to charge up your special ability. You can only do that twice in the game, which generally is a bigger ability. Some of the characters I find that I'll charge up their ability and then I don't really need to roll the dice anymore for that. So I have found I waste some of my actions, which is a feel bad. A lot of times I'll be like, okay, cool, I have the dice I need to go to a certain location. or to hit the monster there, or I have the dice I need from a location and I can't move to that location, and maybe there's nobody at my location. So it makes it really hard to plan. I think one of the most enjoyable parts of cooperative gaming is planning and saying, okay, I'm going to go here and do this. You do this on your turn, maybe. So that's gone. You just basically roll your dice, and you're like, okay. Sometimes you can. There are different things you can do with your die rolling. You can use, if you get 2 matching symbols, well, you can put a blocker there. Not a really great thing. Okay, you can use mana to re-roll a die, but there's 6 different outcomes, and getting the outcome that you need, it's 1 in 6. So that's not the best odds. Also, there are cards. Now, this is where kind of the events and things tie in, because I have a playthrough on this channel as well. But on this playthrough, there's a couple of events that really mess with your ability to re-roll your dice. There's one of them that makes you have to spend twice as much mana. There's another one that doesn't give you mana, and this is for the whole round for all of the characters, that doesn't give you mana rewards for killing monsters. And there's some monsters that you really can only kill. I mean, it's very unlikely that you'll roll what you need, and you'll kill by spending all of your mana. And so you kind of want to save your mana to do that. So there are some decisions to be made for sure if you have a good roll, but there are definitely turns when you're going to have, you're going to roll and you're going to say, well, this whole roll is useless. I don't have mana. I didn't gain any because I had that card, or I have the mana thing out that I can't re-roll. So it's a feel bad, and I've only played this game solo. I'm predominantly a solo player, which I will mention as a plus for the game. This is a great game to solo. Now, oftentimes you play a game that, not to get too far from my my original point here, oftentimes I'll play a game where you're just, you want to play all the characters because you're going to get the full experience. Most games are intended to be played by getting the full suite of powers, sometimes different powers, really they get better or worse depending on the player count. So it's nice to really play with the full complement. In this game, you can play with all 4 characters very easily. You're looking at the one, roll the dice. You can't really plan for the other character because you don't know what you're going to roll, and so you're just focused on them. It's one of the easiest games to play solo, I find. It's very, very approachable for that way as well. But but if you're playing like each of you has a turn, and you roll, and you're like, well, I can't do anything with this roll. I have no mana left, or I spent the mana and I rolled and I just got the same result or a different result that's equally useless, and you kind of waste a bunch of your actions. That's kind of a feel bad for your turn. However, this does come with a couple of benefits. Number one, the turns move very, very quickly because you roll. Well, I can do this, I can do that. There's a die face that you can activate your special power. That's another thing that before I get too far from the die rolling, it's nice to be able to use your special power, but if you don't roll your special power, your character is basically the same as anybody else's. But essentially, the turns will go very quickly, and if people are concerned about the alpha player thing, quarterbacking, it's very hard to do that because you're like, well, this is the dice that I have. You can't tell me what to do on my turn because, However, to me personally, that's the whole point of a cooperative game. So people that don't like quarterbacking will probably enjoy this because you can't really get an alpha player in this. But to me, I think just play a different game if you don't like that aspect. But that's a whole nother tangent. I like to be able to talk to my teammate. I like to be able to plan. That's one of the things that I really love about cooperative gaming. So yeah, the luck plays a significant role because you're rolling your dice. The player powers themselves are interesting. Some of them are much better than others. But again, you can only use your special power if you roll that. So it's a nice little thing. I think that the way they did the dice is very interesting because they give you, if you roll 2 of the same symbol, you can go ahead and place a blocker. Not the best thing you can do. You can block the monsters for just a round in that row that you're at. You can. There's one that allows you to move anywhere, and then there's just specific die faces that allow you to move to a space. There are a bunch of things that say like, hey, you can hit a monster's any spot you want. And when you cover up those spaces, you're kind of like, well, it doesn't really. I'm just covering a space at random. For the next person because there's no one is just as good as the other. So it is difficult to plan in that aspect as well. But I do like that that it is, does have that ability to roll. You don't have to worry about the rest of the characters. So in that way, I think it's a lot less mental strain to play. It's a lot, like I said, I think all this works towards more approachability. you know, various age groups, various skill levels. You know, this is like the great unifier in that way, in terms of like, you know, it's all for that approachability, I think, because, you know, somebody told me once, my friend told me once that he thought one of the great things about Warhammer for him, he really loves Warhammer, is that like you're rolling a lot of dice, you know, there's a lot of luck involved. And in that way, now you know, even the worst player can have a chance, is what he says. I tend to fall more on the side of like, I want to get better at a game and then be able to use that skill to leverage towards a victory, or, you know, like to play the harder modes, etc. So that's kind of in it for me. Let's talk quickly about the events as well. I do like the event cards. I like that they change it up per game. You can also have a mix. I like that there is a good event in there, you know, so if you play on like the standard, you know, the 3 out of 5 difficulty, you're going to have 1 good event, 3 bad events, and a neutral event. And it's kind of nice because like it is cool sometimes to get that good event, and maybe it will help you, and maybe it will not help you that particular round, but it's nice to see occasionally. It's nice to have that kind of a mix, and I like that you can, you know, weight it towards better events if you want an easier game or whatever. That's kind of cool. Some of the bad events can be quite punishing, as I said. Like, so like there's one that strips away one of your dice for the whole round, and that's the whole round. So they can be very damaging. Again, it kind of depends how you know, like what kind of, that's what, it just kind of adds to the swinginess of the game, I find. But I do like that the events are there, and they do add interest. It's not just like, I mean, again, like there's one that might be like, okay, you can't gain mana from monsters. Well, maybe you know, in theory, you might think like, okay, well, maybe I'll save and I won't kill monsters. I'll do other things this round, you know, so that when I kill them, I can gain a lot of mana. But, you know, I feel like you kind of have to continually kill the monsters. So it's just a punishment. It doesn't really help you in your thinking, I think. You know, so, but, you know, it is kind of cool. The idea that variety is there from round to round. There's just different challenges. And then the monsters, I do like the monsters. I don't okay, so there is a cool variety there. Like there's a werewolf. He's, you know, he doesn't have a special power, but he's like medium strength and he gives you a reward. There's one that he gives you no reward. He's very easy to beat, but they start closer to the temple. You know, so like that's that much closer to hitting the temple. There's one that he needs a lot of symbols. You can't mana burst him, so you have to really focus on him. But then when you beat him, you get a couple of mana. And then there's this dragon. You kind of have to wait and just mana burst him, or, you know, just get really lucky on your roll, or use maybe some of your special powers. The fighterish kind of character, he has a way to kind of be a little bit easier to defeat the dragon. But he gives you like a health and a mana. So it's just, when he shows up, you're like, okay, I gotta, that's my big thing I gotta deal with. The archers you gotta kill right away, because they keep shooting if there's no one in front of them. So they can just keep pinging you and pinging you. They're really nasty. But it's interesting because it helps with the spatial thing a little bit. You know, so I like the variety that's there. However, you know, in a different game, I might find like, hey, let's kill this guy first because he's going to keep shooting us. But in reality, you roll your dice and you're like, I don't have anything to hit that guy, or I have it to hit him, but he's over here and I can't reach him. So it doesn't really matter. So the way the enemies are built up, I like the variety that's there, but I don't think that you can really plan around. I mean, again, that just comes down to planning. So yeah, overall, you know, again, I think the big thing here is approachability, ease of play, ease of setup. I mean, you can get the game learned, played, set up, and rip through your turns very easily. That's great, very approachable for different skill levels, etc. The game is very inexpensive, as I said. It's a good production, you know, for its price point, especially. Like, but you know, it's great for solo. However, I think, you know, you can't really plan for it. You can have some feel bads when you roll dice and you're like, okay, you know, I would like a little more cooperation in a game like this where you can kind of plan out your turns with the other players. And I also would like a little more agency. Maybe if you could at least just move or something, or spend 2 dice to something like that where you could kind of take advantage. But all in all, a solid little production. It was fun to do. I think, you know, for this gaming space, I do have some other games that fight for that kind of spot, but it is a good one to pull out when you want a more approachable thing, or, you know, or maybe to solo. Well, those are my thoughts. Let me know down below if you disagree or you agree, or this review helped you or not. But for now, I gotta roll.